Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today on this Tuesday, including Brian Burke standing by, brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Book your island getaway today at BaysideOceanfrontResort.com, or you can call 250-248-8333. Canucks continue their 5-game road trip after losing the other night in Winnipeg. Tonight in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. We're joined now by friend of the show, President of Hockey Operations for the Penguins, Brian Burke. Brian, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Donnie. How are you? Did you just say that people come on the show get a gift? I've never gotten a bloody thing.
Well, we'll work on it for you. We'll get back to you on that, Brian. Hey, almost 2 years on the job. Your anniversary will be on February.
Yep.
Almost 2 years on the job. What sticks out for you about the Pittsburgh market, Brian?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. There's so many positives. Like, I didn't know Pittsburgh as a market. I think if you haven't worked in a city and you don't know it that well, you're used to flying in, playing the game, and flying out, and not spending any time there at all. So I didn't know the city at all, and I didn't realize how nice it was. The people are really nice. It's beautiful. And the bridges and the rivers and the way the city's been rebuilt and everything, and people are really nice. And I'm thrilled. We all really enjoy it immensely. It's a great place to play. Yep. So if you're looking at things like that players talk about, there's lots to do, lots of restaurants. The taxes are low, crime is low, travel's good. There's a lot to like here. It's a great city. I really enjoy it.
You had me at the taxes are low. Hey, Brian, your team holds down the second wild. You know what it's like in BC. Your team holds down the second wild card spot in the East. You just snapped a 6-game skid with a win against Arizona on Sunday. What's your opinion of the way your team's playing?
Well, we've been streaky, which is not a part of our DNA. We've been in the playoffs for 16 straight years. The Athletic rated us as the most successful NHL team in the league for 15 years. So we're not used to long streaks of losing. Now, we're used to winning more. This year we've had 2 6-game losing streaks, which is not typical of our team, but finally snapped out of it the other day. We have a good team. We have a good coach. We're a contender. We just have to get more consistent, I think, is our biggest challenge.
Hey, Brian, you know the fan base in Vancouver, not happy right now. It's been 11 years, actually, Brian. It's been a tough stretch here in Vancouver. Everybody wants this to turn overnight, and you know it doesn't turn overnight. Hey, Brian, I'm going to ask you about the salary cap. It's not going up. It's staying flat. There's not a lot of trades. Is this ever going to change? Like, how do you start making some big deals? Everybody wants trades.
Well, first off, I think the salary cap is going to go up. And again, the information I've gotten from the NHL is the salary cap is going to go up. Maybe not so much this year, but over the next few years, it's projected to go up $3 to $5 million is what I read. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what I was told. So that'll bring some relief. I think teams have to get more prudent with their long-term deals so that you're not choking on a deal for 4 to 5 years after you sign it. But, no, I know the fan base is impatient. That's tough. It's tough to fix your team when you're capped out.
Brian, Jim Rutherford did an article in the Pittsburgh Tribune today, talked about, stress levels in Vancouver. It's not an easy market. No one knows it better than you. It's a hot Canadian market. What advice would you have for Jim? I mean, he basically said in the article that, the stress is there and, he even talked about potential retirement.
He what?
He talked about, what was the quote? If at some point the stress gets too hard to handle, that'll probably be where I'll be retired somewhere, is the quote from Jim in the newspaper in Pittsburgh today, Brian.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, how would you compare the stress level in Pittsburgh to the stress level in Vancouver?
Well, first of all, you just lost me for about 45 seconds, so I have no idea what you said. But But the notion of, I don't think Jimmy Rutherford's thinking about retirement. I think he's a junkie like I am. He's a lifer.
Mm-hmm.
He could have retired before now. He's won 3 cups. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He could have retired a long time ago. I think he just likes doing the job like all of us. And it's part of his competitive nature. Losing is not easy. Fixing teams is not easy in a hard cap system. These teams are selfish. They watch you play. They scout. They watch everything you do. It's hard to improve, and it's really difficult to do. And I wouldn't have any. I think the world of Jim Rutherford. I'm not going to offer him any advice. Or Patrick Alvin, who I work with here, who I think the world of. It's just hard when you're changing your team. It's been the same for us. I've been here. This is my 3rd year. We have not been able to make major structural changes to our team either because we've kept the band together and we're capped out. It's really hard to do, and there's no quick fix.
And Brian, going back to the previous question, the stress levels in Pittsburgh versus Vancouver.
The stress levels in Pittsburgh or Vancouver, I think the stress levels are the same everywhere. The pressure's on us all. It's the same pressure. You win 2 cups in a row in Tampa. You miss the 3rd. You don't win in the 3rd year. All of a sudden, now the pressure's on, right? Pressure doesn't change. It's like a glacier in your backyard. It's always there. It's always emitting great pressure. It's always pushing you. It's part of this giant pressure that's built into the job. And I remember winning the Stanley Cup in Anaheim. I remember I woke up 2 or 3 days later, and I said, I got to fly to Montreal to sign J.S. Giguère. And my wife at the time said, can we please enjoy this cup for more than 2 days? So the answer is no. The pressure doesn't change. The noise level changes. There's less noise. Mm-hmm. Certain Canadian markets are, Vancouver. I've said this before, so I'm not being critical. I love Vancouver. I loved working there. I worked there twice, loved it both times. There's a schizo edge to the media in Vancouver. There's a mainstream media in Vancouver, and then there's a fringe edge that dominates the social media, and you have to just learn to tune that out. You just have to ignore it.
Hey, something you said a couple of answers ago, Brian, the way the NHL is set up these days with the hard cap, it's hard to turn things around versus, let's say, the old days when you could make a trade much more easier. Do you like the way the NHL is set up these days versus what used to be?
Yeah, I miss the flexibility, but the hard cap was the greatest thing that ever happened in pro sports is the hard cap. Because now it's truly GM mano a mano. Now you got to beat a guy. You can't just outspend him like you used to be able to. So yeah, I miss the flexibility at times, but you can maintain flexibility if you don't get capped out. Like there's no reason for this many teams to be at the cap. Mm-hmm. Like you should be at the cap if you have a good team. If you don't have a good team, you shouldn't be at the cap, and you should have flexibility. So that's the puzzle to me is how are 20 teams capped out of 32 teams? How can 20 teams? Are there 20 elite teams? How can they be capped out? I understand why the Tampa Bay Lightning are capped out. Mm-hmm. They've done an unbelievable job. I understand why we're capped out. Not sure why some other teams are capped out. But the flexibility part of it, do we miss that? I wouldn't trade anything. The league getting the hard cap is what saved this sport.
Sidney Crosby, Brian, 35 years old, 47 points, 39 games. Where's his game at?
He's just amazing. Like, I thought I knew how good he was. Mm-hmm. And you don't really know how good a player is until you're on his team and travel with him and watch him practice and watch him play. This guy's the best player I ever had. And you think back, Donnie, you know some of the players I've had.
Pavel,
That's some pretty good players, including several who are in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And this guy's the best player I ever had. And the work ethic and the approach to watch him practice and watch him skate and just the attention to detail and the work is just phenomenal. So it's been a joy. He's fantastic.
And Chris Letang, Brian, suffers a stroke, back to work, back at practice 10 days later. What does that say about him, and how scary was that situation?
Well, it's scary because you hear that it's a word that evokes lots of fear.
Yep.
You say if someone has a stroke and you're like, oh my God, oh my God. And that word carries a connotation and a notion of risk and damage and horrible things are going to happen when in fact it was not that serious, thank God, for Tanger. And he was able to compete 2 weeks after it happened. So fortunate for him and for us. He's been terrific for us. He's a warrior. He's a workhorse. He's a gym rat. Like we just had the whole team go to his dad's funeral yesterday. We flew back after the funeral last night, which is Pittsburgh Penguins. That's what we do. That's the way things work in Pittsburgh. And the whole team went, and hopefully Tanger will be back soon. But it's been great for him as just to have him as a player and a person.
Brian, thanks for doing this, and thanks for the kind words about the Vancouver media. Hey, by the way, Berkey, have you read Dan Russell's book? You're in it. No? Very good. It's a good read.
You're a big part of it, Brian.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised that it's good because Dan's a good guy. But I have not read it yet. I will get it now. I'm reading John Shannon's book.
Yeah. He's a regular on this show as well. We talked about this earlier, how Rick and I and everybody else, Wednesdays, CKNW with Dan was such a big deal, and so is having you on today. Brian, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, guys. Nothing will ever compete with what Dan Russell did on radio in Vancouver. It's not going to happen again.
We're trying our best. Thanks, Berkey. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Brian Burke, Pittsburgh Penguins president of hockey operations.
Just we talked about Donnie capped out teams, and it's amazing how many teams are struggling with the cap and the lack of trades. And when you look at the Canucks not getting out of their mess, there's the reason why.
Yeah, and he said it there. He misses the flexibility.
That's it.
There's a part of them part of Brian and every general manager. They'd love to wheel and deal like they used to do back in the old days, and you could turn your team around fairly quickly, or at least you could make an attempt at turning your team around fairly quickly. But when you look at the finances of the National Hockey League, the cap's the better way to go.
Yeah.
Interest levels are up, ratings, all of that. The league is more competitive, but you do miss those old school days when you could run and gun with the moves you make and make quick moves, make big blockbuster trades. You don't see that anymore.
You don't see
Financially,
it anymore.
though, it's a little bit more boring.
Yeah.
No question about it. But it is the way to go.